I always like to get a drink. Tiny. Don't make me come over there. Oh, I'm getting sore today. Okay, let me just check. Analytics. Finger bubblies. Everything's hunky-dory. So I want to go over a specific video, which is funny enough because I was going to do a different video, but I'm not going to do that video. I'm going to do a different video because so when is the death battle between you two happening? End of this month. Me and Tony will fight it out in a pit of jelly. Though, what days are those? Yeah, 31st. Oh, so I want to go over this video that just came out. Came out 16 hours ago by Words of Paradise. And the reason why is because I've seen so much stuff about Mixtape on X or Twitter, and I haven't, of course, I've not played it, but I'm generally curious because the more I find out about it from little drips of pieces of information, the more this game fascinates me, not out of interest of playing it, but purely out of interest of just seeing how much of a shit show this game is. Because I found out it's made by an indie development group in Melbourne, which is Australia. So I'm like, okay, that explains why it's completely woke and psychotic. And then also the fact that apparently one of the people that work, or one of the higher ups in this game, is like got some like family member that's like a billionaire or a multi-millionaire. Asmongold played it. I wouldn't even really call it a game, to be completely honest. I saw some of the clips on it, and some of the people were pointing out that you can literally do nothing in the game. Like, it will tell you to press buttons to do certain actions, and even if you don't press the buttons and you don't even interact with the game whatsoever, you still complete it. So it's just like one of those where it's just like really weird. Can you Aussies stop ruining us? It's not just Aussies, bro. You've got Americans that are doing it, Europeans that are doing it, some in Japan. It's all over the place. That's the problem. It's all over the place. Got people infiltrating everywhere. So that's why I want to look into the game more. Because I do think Mixtape is just one of many examples when it comes to games that are just generally not that great, but they're being promoted by like mainstream gaming outlets as well. So I love the way everyone in chat is a member. They're just, yeah. So I wanted to go over Words of Paradise's video on this because of the very fact that, one, I'm just generally interested. Plus, he DM'd it to me. He's like, oh yeah. And I was like, I'm generally curious. So I'm going to wait a couple more minutes and then we'll kick off the video once we get more people in stream. So I did get a package today. I got like a bunch of books. A boatload of books. So a boatload of books. And then I've got a bunch of books stacked down here because this is where my cat peed last night while I was out at karate training. And I got home and it's just like a bloody like puddle of water there, and I'm like really irritated with her right now. So I'm like partly in a foul mood. I heard about this mixtape shit. Yeah. So I'm partially in a foul mood because I came home last night. The cat got in here. Gotta head off. I'll see you. Catch you later. See you, Tony. So yeah, there was that. So I got home at like 10:30 last night. I had to clean that. At least her pee didn't smell bad, because when she had a bladder infection, I almost actually threw up the last time I smelled her pee, because it was like she'd pee in the room and it was just like, ugh. So that happened. And then she went and pooped in her actual kitty litter tray because she decided to use it the second time she did something. But she's so stupid, she sat in her poop. And so you got all the poop and all the kitty litter tray matted to her butt, so I got to get like borrow a friend's shave, one of those animal shaver things, to try and like clean her butt. Well, just kind of shave her butt. I cleaned her butt, but then she walked around the house with a dirty ass while I'm trying to chase her to clean it, and it was like crap everywhere. So I had to spend all night, like 3 o'clock at night, trying to clean that. And then when I finally went to bed, which was 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, she then wouldn't let me sleep. So I'm like annoyed with her right now. Quite annoyed with her. Quite annoyed. But I did end up getting a bunch of packages today, which, funny enough, I've actually got doubles of them, but I got the entire, well, they're just all books. They're all just books, but I'm up to date on the High School DxD now, so I got I wanted to try and get a specific volume, and I couldn't get a specific volume because they just wouldn't sell it. I keep running into the same problem. And so I was like, I found a place that was just selling the entire collection, but it meant that I'd end up having a bunch of doubles. But I was like, okay, I'm glad he doesn't watch because he's at training right now. He's doing his black belt training, but I'm going to gift all the doubles to my friend this Christmas, which he won't buy any of them. So I'll just end up giving all the doubles to him. Mixtape is basically a worse visual novel. Yeah, that's kind of how I see it. So now I've got all the High School DxD light novels up to date in English, and all the doubles I will give to my friend this Christmas because his birthday's already been and gone. So I'm almost tempted to try and actually still find all the missing ones for him, but I don't know, that's expensive and annoying. But that also just leaves it like ages until Christmas. It's like 6 months away for Christmas, but I guess it would give me time to find them also. There's that. But I got that parcel. And then I also ended up getting the extra copies of these that ended up getting delivered. So now I've got 2 copies of these. I don't know how the hell that happened, but I'll give that to him as well. I saw the first 5 minutes of the game. It looked fun, but it looks like it's made for disabled people. Which one are you missing now? I'm not missing any DxD volumes now. I'm completely up to date on the English releases. I was at the time missing volume 7. I think it was volume 7 or it was volume A. I wrote it down, but I was missing one of those volumes. And then when I finally got the order done, it then popped up on a book website that I could buy it from. But then the next volume was just not available. So I was just like, I was just glad I ended up buying it all. Also, Chibi hasn't gotten drama. Can we celebrate? Yes, we can celebrate, but don't jinx it, because generally when Chibi's not in drama for a couple of weeks, generally that means something's brewing. We don't want to jinx it. We take the silence for as long as possible. He could also be focusing a lot more on... I don't know what the status is of his moving. But he better be moving, otherwise it would just be recipe for disaster. But yeah, I've now got all the High School DxD light novels. I had a bunch, but I just couldn't get a bunch because I left it for a year or so. And if you don't buy up to date on the latest light novels and you leave it, say, like 2-3 years, they just don't have any more copies and they don't reprint them unless it's really rare. Right, like a rare chance on that. Some series they do, right? Like Mushoku Tensei, you can buy the entire series still. But there are some light novel series where it's like, once they stop reprinting them, they generally stop reprinting them after a couple of years. So it's a real pain in the ass to get them. So... what do you think is the best anime that was released in the past 2 years? I don't know. I don't really rate a bunch of animes. I just generally just watch and enjoy. I mean, I've been keeping up to date on Slime. I've actually been keeping up to date. I actually do want to make a video on that because I want to troll Reddit Because every time I talk about slime, they post my video on Reddit and they whine about me non-stop. Because apparently I'm like the worst slime fan, which to be honest, I've probably read the light novels more than them, which just demonstrates that most slime fans on Reddit probably don't know anything about the series. I've been watching that. That's good. Been keeping up to date of Classroom the Elite. So out of that top row, I'm pretty much up to date on those 3. I will probably binge watch that. Second row, I haven't been watching anything. I don't really care. I'll be honest, I don't really care as much for ReZero as I used to. I only ever forced myself to watch it during season 3 because I was meant to do a collaboration with Ed, but then Ed ended up ghosting me on that, which just irritated me, so never ended up doing that, and I just ended up getting jaded and stopped watching it. So it's what happens when you trust content creators. I haven't watched that because I'll probably binge watch that. As far as this other row goes, I was starting to watch that, but I kind of lost track. I just kind of fizzled off. I will binge watch Dr. Stone. I'm debating on watching that and making a video where I just call it shit and then watch people get angry and watch specific anti-tubers that glaze this series because they want to be on Reddit and be praised on Reddit, glaze it. I might binge watch Irma Khan. I might catch up to date on it soon. Haven't watched any of that. This row, of course, I've been staying up to date on the Gals one. I recommended it to Sinai. I know she was watching it. I think she watched 1 episode. I don't know how far she's on it. Why isn't your stream 1080p? Everything on my end is pretty hunky-dory. Concurrent viewers, likes, da-da-da-da-da. Doesn't seem like there's anything wrong with it. Dunno. So, been staying up to date on that. I am curious to know what her feelings are on it now that she's probably watched more than a couple of episodes. I'm trying to watch more of that. I don't mind it. But there are some things where I'm like, yeah, it's fun to watch, but I just don't really care as much. I don't know. It's like, it's fun. It's not bad. It's just one of those where it's like, I don't know. I kind of want something different right now. Like, I want, like, genuine romance animes. But that one's just more, like, silly romance. Another batch of 100 Girlfriends soon. Can't wait. Yeah. I hadn't even watched the latest season on that. I watched a little bit. What about... I haven't watched it. I didn't really have much interest in it. People only, I feel like, gassed it up because of the whole drama over it. As far as everything else goes, it's pretty much most things that I'm watching. Because I just finished rewatching Moonlit Fantasy again. 100 Girlfriends, I am not touching. I am well ahead of the story through the manga. I will not touch it. I do not care to touch it. I think it is an absolute shit show. If you enjoy it, that's great. I just don't want to waste my time. I've got better things to do than watch Rent a Girlfriend. So... tits for recovering attention span. My attention span is not cooked anymore. It is burnt. Do you watch YouTube Shorts, Jono? Because if you do, what browser do you use? And if you want, use, and this isn't a sponsor, but use the browser engine Brave. Because on Brave, there's a setting that you can go to in your settings that can turn off YouTube Shorts. So whenever you go to YouTube, it won't recommend Shorts. I mean, that's one way to help, because then you just don't ever watch any YouTube Shorts. It blocks it from everything, right? So you just don't ever get recommended YouTube Shorts. I think it's great. I find Brave is generally a much more better browser as far as compactability goes. I feel like a lot of people praise Opera GX way too much. I find Opera GX to be very bloated. I find it has a lot of features I just don't care for. I just find the overall service just generally shit. And I just feel like Opera GX only gets praised because it sponsors everyone in the content creator space. So I just don't really care about it. I prefer Brave. I may have ADHD since I have thousands of tabs on my phone. I have hundreds of tabs and all that kind of stuff, but I think if you want to try and help with it, that's why I say use Brave, because then you can just at least ban YouTube Shorts, and that might help a little bit. This is why I don't use YouTube Shorts. I only use TikTok to download songs for free. I guess, yeah. Romance animes that I started watching is called I End This Love Again. It's not that bad. But yeah, those are the animes that I was watching. Now, let's see if I got the volume right.
When people hear the words indie game, they usually picture something specific. You know, a tiny team, a passion project, a few developers scraping money together, maybe a grandiose vision for a Kickstarter that blows past expectations of both the creators and their audience. A dream that almost didn't happen. That image is powerful, because indie sells authenticity. In a world full of fake online influencers, snake oil selling grifters, and politicians telling you everything you want to hear only to bow and kowtow to the uniparty Bohemian Grove fuckfest, authenticity is the last true currency in the digital landscape. The word indie tells the...
I think that is actually true when it comes to just everything in general, when it comes to gaming, when it comes to like even anime. I definitely feel this has become a big thing when it comes to content creation. It's one of the reasons why I actually get really irritated at the content creator space, because when I look at the content creator space, right, and you look at like gaming and stuff, it's all about being authentic, right? I think it's one of the reasons why I get into a lot of scuffles with content creators, because you can see behind the mask kind of thing. And it's the same with gaming, right? You see a lot of these games that try and like spoon feed a bunch of rubbish to you. Just joined. Did I miss anything? Actually, no, we're just starting the video. That's why I always give it like 10 minutes, but 20 minutes worked well. Oh, we're missing 3 regulars. Yeah. So I feel like the desire for authenticness is on a very high demand as far as gaming and music and content creators go, because there is just a massive vacuum when it comes to that kind of stuff. I just feel like there's everything feels very fake. Everything feels very artificial. Everything feels very performative. You look at all the big content creators in the space, it's all very performative. It's all very scripted. A lot of them just put on masks. And then whenever you point out the masks, people just go psychotic and go... Brr, 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 brr. I mean, there was recent drama with another VTuber going over the whole, like, showing your face kind of thing, and they weren't really understanding why people were kind of getting upset about it, and the whole like trying to peer pressure people into going against what is kind of like seen as like the expected cultural expectation. So I don't want to ramble too much, because I could go on an hour about the whole issue when it comes to authenticness, but Words of Paradise is right on that. Like, people desire authenticness as far as things go.
The audience. This isn't corporate. It's not manufactured. It's not pushed by institutions. This is real art made by real people outside the system. Even if sometimes those artists look like they do their shopping by exclusively purchasing thrift store blind bags and are forced to wear whatever was inside. But what if I told you that image is not the whole truth? What if some of these scrappy indie games are not really as independent as the marketing makes them feel, and behind the aesthetic of rebellion, creativity, and underdog authenticity?
I will say, I do think there is a lot of manipulation going on now with the whole, like, indie companies, because I think because indies are able to, like, build small teams and make heaps of money, because if it does well, and the best promotion and best marketing is content creators, I feel like a lot of them will jump on that, and, you know, if it's a $20, $30 game and it's small and it's simple, people will enjoy it. But I do think there is an issue where you've got a lot of weird backings behind it as well. So I do think there's a lot of manipulation on what are real indie companies now. That's why, yeah, you want that authentic thing. It's kind of funny, because I remember a couple of streams ago, I talked about a game that I actually want to make. I don't even know where to start on it, because again, I'm not a game developer or anything like that. I was just someone that just had an idea in my head and I kind of pitched it to chat, and chat was like, oh, that sounds cool. Yes, a hobby for escapism, playing a character. Let's get our actual faces involved. Fake VTuber. Yeah, that was the thing that really irritated me. And it was Amy Lee that ended up making that tweet. And I'm like, this is just XQC again. Which was really ironic because she was complaining that people were criticizing her. But her audience was just going around, like, attacking people, sending death threats, calling people ugly, fat, like, all these insults. And I'm like, you know, you're not really selling Amy Lee's point here, because by insulting people's looks and who they are, Espiritu is the new Pirate Software. I hope I'm the good version of what Pirate Software should have been, because Pirate Software is like cooked. I used to like Pirate Software, but then when he went down his unhinged stuff. But yeah, it just felt like Amy Lee really didn't understand why VTubers were getting frustrated, because it's the same thing XQC did, where he's like, oh yeah, all these VTubers are ugly, that's why they have an avatar, and then all these VTubers jumped it and went, I'm gonna clout chase, let me dox my face, and they say that's not dox, and I'm like, well, a lot of them just jumped on it and did it for the first time, and trust me, I actually respect VTubers a lot that actually stick to hiding their face, because I understand why they do it. Like, at the end of the day, in this political climate, you really don't want to show your face and then rock up to some, like, random convention. Like, I've debated on even going to the conventions anymore, because I generally get a little bit worried and a little bit skittish that people will jump me. So, I know it's a bit off tangent, but it's like, again, being authentic, being true to yourself, it's...
Authenticity, there's a much bigger pipeline. Publisher money, platform money, government and taxpayer money, and ideological funding criteria buried in PDFs almost nobody reads. Because anytime you want to find out the truth, you need only to follow the money. Today we're talking about Beethoven and Dinosaur, the Artful Escape, Mixtape, Annapurna Interactive, Vic Screen, and the fake indie pipeline. And before anybody says this is just some random conspiracy theory, allow me to introduce you to the Tuskegee Experiments, MK Ultra, Edward Bernays, and so much more, but this isn't the video for that, stories for later. No, we're not guessing. We're following the money. Beethoven and Dinosaur is an Australian...
Generally, people that scream conspiracy theory are generally just scared that there might be something more behind the scenes.
Studio behind The Artful Escape, a psychedelic musical narrative game that was promoted with all the usual indie language. Creative, strange, personal, artistic, weird, heart...
I hate the way artistic gets used so much. Is it autistic or artistic? Oh, Artful Escape, beautiful, because I was going to say autistic. I hate when people just use that word as like a buzzword now. It generally irritates me, because I feel like it just gets used as like a slogan to try and sell something.
Felt and outside the mainstream, which honestly all might have been true at the beginning, but that didn't last. To be clear, I'm not saying the game is...
It's not only fake indie, it's a fake game. Like I said at the start of the stream, I wouldn't even call this a game, because I saw the gameplay aspects to it, and there's no clicking involved. Like, they say, oh, you can click stuff and it might change the animation a little bit, but there's no stakes in the actual story itself. It's basically it's a streamlined story. There's no like, oh, you can mess something up and then you've got to restart. It's like, nope. Conventions are not what they used to be. It's full of fake fans who go there for clown pictures. Yep. I remember last time I was there, I saw two kids just sitting there doing weird dances with TikTok the entire time. Not once did they actually do anything at the convention. They didn't. They just sat there the entire time just doing TikTok videos. I was just like, I mean, I guess, but you spent like $60 to go there, and you could have done all of that outside in the park. So, I don't know. I just generally... That's why I like authentic content creators that generally have a passion for things. And I generally get a little bit attached to them because I'm so desperate to find content creators that are authentic, which is why I feel like I've attached onto Leon so bad. I'm like, it's just like, oh, I finally found someone that's actually authentic, right? So I get a little bit clingy to him because I'm like, finally.
It's bad. I actually haven't played.
Shrug, it's a visual novel essentially. I'd say it's still a game, though no branching paths. It's a very shit inferior version of a visual novel, in my opinion.
That's not the point. The point's the branding. It's the image.
For me, a visual novel is not just a story, right? And naturally, yeah, this has got more live animations and stuff compared to like still shot images. But for me, a visual novel has choices and stuff where you can pick different pathways, and it feels like depending on those pathways can have impacts on the story. That's what I like about visual novels. That being said, I've never played a visual novel that doesn't have branching stories, because I was kind of thinking of things like Sakura Santa and Neko Para. Does Neko Para have branching stories or different outcomes? Like even if it's slight little variations, I don't know. I feel like, yeah, you could argue the game is a visual novel, but I just feel like it's an inferior version of a visual novel in a game, masked as a game, right? I just don't like how it's trying to falsely advertise itself, right? I think that's my biggest issue, is not so much that, right, you could argue that it's a visual novel. The issue that I have is that it tries to market itself that there's like gravity in the decisions. Oh, if you don't click this button, something could go wrong. Nothing goes wrong. Montesensei, Leon, Sinai, and Espiritu, the Critters of Goats. I appreciate that. And I do think that's a good list. That is a good list. I did see Montesensei stream this morning, but I was like half asleep, so I ended up going into a coma, so I didn't actually watch his stream.
The point is how the public is encouraged to see this as a pure grassroots indie project, when the money trail tells a much more complicated story. This game did have a Kickstarter, and that matters, because Kickstarter is one of the biggest tools for creating the small, scrappy underdog image. You go directly to the people, you ask the audience to fund the dream, you sell that idea to the fans, and they make it happen. And sometimes it truly works. Hollow Knight, Undertale, Shenmue 3.
Have you ever been to a library that is not a school library or a library at a college school you study? I've been to a local library in my town. Now it feels less like that, and it feels more like a government building for other purposes.
But here's the problem. Their Kickstarter? It failed. That means the public did not actually fund this game. It means the public didn't even want this game, as you can see from their whopping 72-person max concurrent player count on Steam when it released. So if the grassroots campaign failed, where'd the game go next? Well, in 2015, Epic...
That would also mean that the Kickstarter was pointless. Like obvious, that's what he's saying. But it just means that they were always intending to make the game, and they already had the funding, but they just wanted to get extra money out of the player base before they even sold the game. Like, it'd be different if it was like a developing group that didn't have any finances to get the thing Kickstarter, right? That's the whole point of a Kickstarter. But they clearly already had the funds. They just wanted extra funds, manipulate the audience, and then still sell the game. That to me is kind of messed up. I don't know. I find that kind of really messed up. Words of Paradise is a poser. A-L-A-M-E-O. I don't know if you're trying to say Lamau. I would ask that you potentially spell it. Why he no read me? Because a lot of people type.
Games publicly announced that it awarded Beethoven...
I mean, if you could explain to me how someone is a poser, knock yourself out.
And Dinosaur a $17,000 grant through the Unreal Dev Grant for the Artful Escape of...
Marketing stunt? I would say so. I would say this is a bit of a marketing stunt. But also just trying to collect extra funds, right? Because that's a lot of the time what they want to do. They want to try and scrape back what extra money they can. And if they've already got funding already, then they've probably got shareholders or backers behind that probably want some return. So if they can get a little bit of extra cash on the side, that would then just go straight to the people that are funding it.
Francis Vendetti. Epic's own announcement says the grant was meant to support the studio's debut game. And that's already a very different story from pure grassroots indie. And to be fair, $17,000 alone is not some like massive blockbuster budget. I'm not pretending it is. But again, that's not the point. The point is that from the beginning, this was not just a fans believed in us and we made it happen sort of game. The public campaign failed and the institutional funding entered the picture.
So they went to Plan B. I'm going to deal with this cat for a second. Like I said, she is on thin ice.
Then comes the bigger piece, Annapurna Interactive. Annapurna becomes a publisher, and this is where the indie label gets very slippery. Annapurna Interactive is not some random tiny publisher operating out of a garage. Annapurna is a prestige publisher connected to Annapurna Pictures, founded by Megan Ellison, daughter of the Oracle billionaire Larry Ellison. Now, I don't mean to be the arbiter of what is and isn't indie here, but when the project starts getting investment money from literal billionaires, I think it's safe to say you're out of the indie territory. But hey,
I mean, that would be, yeah, that would no longer be an indie. That would be heavily backed. Which is why it probably doesn't deserve the title indie, but it will still probably win indie awards. This is the other thing as well. It's like the award shows. You know, these kinds of award shows are heavily, like, fake and much more theatrical. And it feels a lot more paid off. And that's why it's the same. It reminds me of the Crunchyroll Awards. Because people watch the Crunchyroll Awards, they take them seriously, and it's like, why should you take it serious? Like, why? These award shows are rigged before they even start. So it's the same with this, like, indie kind of stuff, right? It will go into a indie award show, it will win it all, but it's not even an indie game at that point. Like, how can you call it an indie when it's backed by a billionaire? That's like Blizzard backing up a small little group and then saying, "Oh, but it's done by an indie company." Okay, but it's heavily backed.
hey, that's marketing. People hear indie and they imagine
Indie is generally seen as a word of, like, right, generally speaking, it is seen as there's no defined, like, line of where an indie stops being an indie, but it's more about a small studio or a small group of people, right? Say 3, 4, 5, maybe even 10 or 25 people, right? I'd say 25. After that, you're probably pushing it. Of people that come together and they make a game. It's like a scrap team, right? It's like scavengers kind of thing, or a group of, like, coders and gamers and stuff that kind of come together, and they have no allegiance to a big corporation or shareholders or a big group of investors. They're just a sort of a scrap group of people that are like, hey, let's make a game, right? And they're like, oh, well, we need money, right? We need money to be able to get this off the ground. Okay, well, then we'll do a Kickstarter. That's, to me, is what an indie is, right? Is a group of people that just kind of come together and they make something out of nothing. Indie used to be self-publishing. Okay. But for me, I find, well, I mean, indie kind of falls into that line that I'm describing, because it's a group of people that kind of come together, that scrap a game together, and then they kind of, like, publish it on, like, a third-party site, whether it's, like, Steam or something like that, right? It's a small group that's just scrapping something together, that's building something without having big backers behind it. But once you go into that territory where it's, like, a big team that has backers behind them, then it's no longer an indie to me, right? Because now you've got people behind you, you've got investments, you've got connections, you've got a big team, you've most likely got a publisher, right? You've got all those already pre-established systems that give you a massive head start. That, to me, stops being a indie, and that becomes more of a proper, like, established one.
independence from corporateness.
The definition has changed, yeah. Like, some studios that will think they're indie have publishers, money from former projects. I think at that point you stop being an indie company and you become more of an established studio or publisher or whichever way. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, but you can start off as an indie and build your way up to something good. It's like Blizzard Entertainment, right? To me, Blizzard used to be an indie, right? Way back when they were called something else. I forget what their original name is, right? But they used to be called something else. It was like a scrap little team that was just making games. And then they went from being an indie to being a more established studio, publisher, and then into this big corporation, right? So they stopped becoming that. And the downside about going from being an indie to not being an indie is, yeah, sometimes it can lose the passion because now you've got to uphold to someone else, right? You've got to answer to a boss or a group or certain standards. To me, indie is unknown guys who work on a project because they love it, even if they can't financially. Yeah, I mean, to me, I imagine like scavengers in a scrapyard trying to piece together something to make something truly unique and something special. That's kind of how I see it. And it's something I've talked about that I'd love to do. I'd love to make my own game. I've talked about the concepts of what I would follow the general story and everything, but I just don't know where to start. I mean, I've got some software that I could use, like .go, I think it's Go Dot, stuff like that, but it's just like knowing where to start, where to build it, how to use it, assets, those kinds of things. It's just, you need to find a small little group of friends or group of people that are like-minded that want to build something together. Money becomes the main reason you make games. I don't know, I find a lot of people, like, I mean, big studios, sure, but I think a lot of developers sometimes just want to make something fun. I mean, like I said, I would love to make a game, not for financial reasons, but you need to be able to make money to be able to pay people. So naturally, a part of the goal is money. But I think there are some people out there that just want to make a game because they want to make a game, and the primary goal isn't necessarily money. And that's what I think makes some indie companies make something truly special, is that factor. But when you've got backers behind it, that's where influence starts to leak in, which is where I think Mixtape comes into it, because it feels more like some weird political agenda or some type of weird messaging that just feels very forced and ham-fisted. And you can tell that because, again, the backing's behind it. Sure, there might be some people that were passionate, but I think it was more politically motivated rather than generally trying to make a game. Because I think if there was a genuine desire to make a game, it would probably have some gameplay in it, other than it just being a shit version of a visual novel simulator.
Institutional power. That's the big lie. Because what they often get is curated prestige media backed by elite capital. Now, that doesn't mean every Annapurna game is bad. I mean, I haven't played Stray, but your boy's a cat lover, and I'm pretty sure I'll end up digging it when I eventually get around to it. This also doesn't even mean every Annapurna developer is evil. I'm a capitalist. Making money will never be a crime in my eyes. But it does mean the image and the reality are not the same thing. This is where my eyebrows started to violently twitch, because indie becomes less of a production category, more of a marketing costume. It lets the project wear the aesthetics of authenticity while benefiting from the machinery of institutions. And Beethoven and Dinosaur are not an isolated case. If anything, the institutional involvement of the Artful Escape was benign and forgettable, given the game's financial failure in the end. But then we get to their newest game. The reason you're all here. Mixtape. This AstroTurf corporately curated 2.5 hour sad excuse for a game.
2.5? Jeepers, that is... How much did they charge for the game? Like, just out of curiosity, how much are they charging for the game for 2.5 hours of entertainment?
Where you can't fail, only to have to press one button, gives us a much clearer look at that pipeline. Vic Screen's official 2022-2023 disclosure lists Mixtape as Beethoven and Dinosaur Party Limited, receiving 150,000 Australian dollars under the Victorian Production Fund for Games. Then Vic Screen's official...
Yeah. Victorian government. I mean, that government literally taxes people astronomical amounts of money, and this is where their game goes into. Great, taxpayers' dollars been wasted again. This is why we end up paying ridiculous. And people wonder why I want to leave the bloody country. People wonder why I want to leave the country.
Official 2023 and 2020.
$15, I think. So you're paying about $5 roughly per hour of entertainment. Maybe like a little bit more. Maybe a little bit more. $17 for me by the looks of it. Okay, so yeah, I'd say $6-7 per hour of entertainment. That's pretty bad.
24 disclosure.
I don't know.
From the next year lists an additional 90,000 Australian dollars for Mixtape. That's just 2 public disclosures. Mixtape received at least 200.
It's also Victorian. Yeah. I said this on Leon's stream when we were doing our collab, and I said the coastline of Australia is where most of the leftists are. That's where most of the leftists are. And you can see that because Melbourne is very politically captured by the left. And it's obvious because the entire state is so bad right now. I just saw an article last night that they want to bring in the military into Melbourne because the crime rate is getting so out of control. Like, it is so bad right now. I've got friends that live in Melbourne, so I'm generally concerned for them. So I might, at some point, probably... I mean, I know they're okay because I see them on Discord playing games, so I know they're clearly okay, but I probably might actually catch up with them on voice chat at some point. I'm in SA, mate. Yeah, so am I. My state might be a shithole, but at least it's not that much of a shithole to our neighbors.
$140,000, almost $250,000.
Why is, like, everyone in my chat almost from the same state as me? It's kind of weird at this point. Even Iron Mouse doesn't like the game Mixtape. Maybe she's still on our side. I think she probably would be on our side if she wasn't so politically captured by her audience. Like I said, she's a prisoner to her own audience, I think.
From Vic Screen. And what's Vic Screen? I'm so glad you asked.
What is your opinion of Adelaide? Is it bad? It's mid. It's overhyped. Adelaide's overhyped. Mate, SA is a great and functional state. I don't know, Mr. Spaz. I don't know. It was Mr. Spaz. Yeah, stick. I don't know about that. I don't know. It has its benefits, right? South Australia is a good state. I love my state. I love the people here. I'm a Victorian refugee. Okay, that's why you think it's that much good. You've gone from shit to somewhat less shit. We have improvements that we could do over here. Our state is still run by idiots. But yeah, it's substantially better than Victoria. Substantially better. Substantially better. But it's just like, it's still got a lot of the same similar issue. Like, some issues as well. Like, honestly, Adelaide is just poorly designed, right? The roads and infrastructure in there, it's just very poorly designed. There are some benefits, but also they don't pre-plan road infrastructure out ahead of time. There's a lot of roads in my area that are just like single lane roads, and they're like, oh yeah, we should have probably made this double lane like 10 years ago. Well, then why didn't you? Because we were lazy. It's just like, yay, Labour government's idiots. Didn't pre-plan ahead. You're stuck in the UK? My condolences.
Vic Screen describes itself as Victoria, Australia's creative and economic screen development agency, supporting screen businesses, infrastructure, projects, events, skilled practitioners, and creatives. For those of you that don't speak corporate hand job, government money goes to Vic Screen. Vic Screen gives that money to selected projects and companies, and taxpayers are unknowingly funding projects and products they have no say in and are just told it's for the culture. Yeah, so much for no taxation without representation, am I right? Because this includes video games, and it's here that the public deserves to know what criteria are shaping those decisions. Because this is not just a neutral pile of money being handed out to good games. Vic Screen has an entire diversity, equity, and inclusion roadmap to 2033, a 10-year roadmap. Not a tweet or some random press release. This is a formal institutional strategy document. The document states its goal clearly: a screen industry that is diverse in people and content. Now that phrase matters. Not just diverse hiring, diverse content. We're not talking only about who gets a job. We're talking about what cultural products are supposed to look like. The roadmap says Vic Screen wants to remove barriers so all screen creators and workers can thrive, and it specifically includes working with underrepresented communities and screen industry partners to review or design funding programs.
I hate DEI. I hate it. Because all it is just racism masked as inclusivity. That's all it is. It's just racism masked as inclusivity. And what's more frustrating is the Victorian state government is taxing its people more to fund a bunch of shitty developers. I could get if they were like funding game development as a whole and letting them be financially independent on what they want to make. But it's just DI slop. Plus, I just don't think government should be giving funding to game developers. I just don't. I think it's a waste. I think it's just a waste of money, especially in this day and age. Like, people are struggling with the cost of living, and the government's solution is to give money to a bunch of developers who have millionaires and billionaires backing it. It's like, yeah, that's a great use of money, Melbourne. Great use of money. Like, again, Labour. This is Labour in a nutshell, right? They waste taxpayers' money and then sit there and say, oh, we need to tax you more so that we can give more money to dumb people. And this is why people are voting One Nation. Because as much as I don't agree with One Nation on everything, they're substantially better than Labour, Liberal, the Greens, and the Nationals. They're just substantially better. Are they perfect? No. Honestly, I'd love to become a politician and say like One Nation and try and steer it in a good, solid direction. Because there's so many policies I would love to see implemented. Like, I've generally got policies that I've thought about in my head, different things that I would scrap, add, change, mold, etc. that would just generally make the actual country so much more efficient, so much more prosperous. People would be able to actually live. Like, my controversial take is GST should not be on fuel. Period. You should not be paying GST on fuel. That is my hot take. It's not even a hot take. It's just solid common sense. GST on fuel should not exist. And I got Grok to do the math for me. The government makes around $4 billion a year in GST. Just under that. It's around $3.5 to $4 billion in GST from fuel. I would scrap that. And I would then find other methods of saving money, like, I don't know, getting out of the World Health Organization, getting out of the World Economic Forum, getting out of the United Nations, like every dumb foreign entity that you're wasting money on, scrap all that, and you'd make the $4 billion back pretty quickly. You drop the tax on GST on fuel, boom. What is GST? It's like it's a tax. Someone could probably explain it, but it's a tax. Basically, GST is a 10% tax on all goods and services, right? So anything you buy and purchase. Like if I go out and I buy, I pay GST on this, right? For shipping, right? You pay GST for buying goods service tax. Yeah, it's just, yeah, it's a good service tax. So you pay 10% GST on everything. But I don't think GST should be on fuel because it's double dipping, right? So when you're paying GST on fuel, you're paying extra for the logistics. Because let's say, for example, you buy a bag of potatoes, right? You buy a bag of potatoes from a shop, right? It's got 10% GST on it. But you're also paying more for the bag of potatoes because the logistics has to pay 10% extra on fuel. And sure, they'll get all these subsidies and all this other, but it's unnecessary complications, it's unnecessary paperwork, it's unnecessary tax systems, it ties everything down. If you were to remove a simple baseline of that, it would reduce the cost of living. Oh, but the government doesn't get as much money? I don't give a shit. It's more than double dipping. Oh yeah, it's more than double dipping, but I'm just saying in general, like it is a form of like double, but yeah, it is. You are correct. It's more than double dip. It's like triple, 5x, depending on how big the logistics and system is behind it. Because it's like, imagine like potato farm, right? You buy a bag of potatoes, the potato farmers have got to pay for equipment, they've got to pay for fertilizer, they've got to pay for water, they've got to pay for all these different things. Those have GST on it. Fuel, GST on it. The logistics to move it, GST on it. So this is why I don't believe fuel should have a GST on it. Because it's them dipping their little fingers into every little aspect of it and screwing the consumer over. And then they spend money on this dumb shit with it. And that's why I got Grok to work out the numbers, because I needed to work out what the numbers were. And I worked out that, yeah, they make around $4 billion a year from that specific aspect of GST on fuel. And I was like, you could easily scrap that and save the money somewhere. And it would reduce the cost of living quite substantially across the board. Just on the fuel alone. I'm not saying, take away GST off of the bag of potatoes. No, just take it off the fuel. Boom, cost of living goes down. We need a middle ground for mainstream VTubing so everyone can be happy. I mean, I'd say I'm probably in the middle ground, right? I am a bit of a leftist, right? I do believe in renewable energy, right? And that's a bit of a controversial take. But this is where I think people get kind of confused because they don't realize that I'm very logical. I'm very numbers orientated. A lot of people go, oh, but green energy is terrible. I like solar. I like battery technology because you don't necessarily need to subsidize it. But with battery and solar technology, it allows people to become more energy independent. But what about wind farms? I don't like wind farms. They're not efficient. They're wasteful. They're overly costly. They're just an inefficient system that is heavily subsidized in the worst way possible. So it's one of those where there is balances when it comes to different policies and systems that you can work with. And I think the problem is that the left has gone too far to an extreme where they're promoting policies that just do not make any financial sense. And they're subsidizing inefficient, bad systems. And because they're so inefficient and bad, it requires so much money and government funding to back it up. The government basically takes more than 50% of wealth you earn. The poor are affected the most. Yeah. Which is funny because they claim, oh, they don't want to hurt the poor, but they do. The poor are heavily affected. How is believing in renewable energy questionable? Because someone raises an eye. I think some people are like very far on the right, don't believe in anything renewable. They just don't like renewable energy, period. But I do believe renewable energy does have a place in the energy and the economy. I just think it's overly manipulated. How is that leftist? There's a lot of people on the far right that classify anyone that believes in renewable energy as a leftist. Because there's this whole idea that you have to be like all about coal and fossil fuel and all the rest. I am a very balanced person, right? I care about the environment. People say, but global warming, I don't care about global warming, right? And that may seem a bit weird, but I don't care about global warming. Because at the end of the day, you should just care about the environment in general. You don't want to put toxins and poisons in your water. You don't want to pollute the air, and you don't want to pollute the ground. And a lot of companies do that. So from a basic first principles of an environment, I don't want bad things. I don't want chemicals in my water. I don't want to turn the frogs gay, kind of thing, right? I don't want chemicals in my water. So from a basic principles of environmentalist, I believe in just making sure everything is as clean, as good as possible. You know, make sure birds aren't dying from drinking water out of a river, right, kind of thing. But do I believe in global warming? I think it's mostly a scam. I think there might be some credibility to it, but I think it's mostly a scam. But that doesn't mean that I don't care. I assume you hate Greta Thunberg? Yes, I hate her. I think she's an absolute hypocrite, a show pony. She is propped up. She's fake. She's not an environmentalist. She is a political puppet. I'm an environmentalist. She's not. She's a fake. But that's the thing. Like, I think global warming is a very heavy scam. But I still believe in protecting the environment. I just think how the government has gone about protecting the environment is not about protecting the environment. It's about trying to scam people out of money and power. That's the problem. And it's the same with renewable energy, right? They implement all these systems that are just non-efficient. But there are good green energy systems that are good. Solar is a good system. It's just, a lot of the times, misused incorrectly. Most cars in China, or at least in Shanghai, 90% of cars are electric. Yeah. And, I mean, there are a lot of cars in China that are pretty sloppy as far as being electric goes. But there is a lot of good electric cars out there. There's a lot. Tesla's a great brand. Whether you like Elon or not, Teslas are a good brand. There's just a lot of misinformation on them because the media hates EVs because fossil fuel industry, right? So there's a lot of private interest. You got to follow the money. Would you buy a Chinese EV? No. No, I'd buy a Tesla. Well, to be honest, Tesla is kind of made in China if you buy it for Australia. If you live in America, then it's made in America. But I would buy a Tesla, not a Chinese brand. I see a lot of BYDs over here. There's a lot of BYDs. I wouldn't get one. I prefer a Tesla. And I see a lot of Teslas over here too. There's a lot of Teslas. People drive Teslas all the time. Every government official is hand-picked by the higher-ups. Yeah, they are. But that's why there are a lot of right-leaning people that see me as a leftist, and a lot of leftists don't like me because I'm not completely believing in the doctrine, right? I'm someone that's very much balanced. I care about the numbers. I care about the facts. I care about the efficiencies, right? If we can use green energy, right, renewable energy in an efficient system that is financially viable and financially good, then I'll go for it. But if it's like wind turbines and it's all just wasting money, no, I don't want it. But I know that's a bit off tangent from this, But the reason why I bring it up is because, governments always find excuses to tax people. Oh, we're doing green energy. We need to tax you more so we can subsidize inefficient systems. And then they waste it on this dumb shit.
That means DEI is not just a side statement. It is tied to funding design, to program design, and to...
What about nuclear energy? Depends on the place, right? Nuclear energy makes sense in many different parts of the world, right? But in Australia, I don't really think Australia needs nuclear energy. I think nuclear energy would just be more expensive. I think you could maybe look at nuclear maybe in very heavily dense cities in Australia. But I feel like, and this is why I like solar and batteries, because a lot of basic homes, they get solar and batteries to get off the grid. What about a lucid air? You ain't getting me fucking buying that shit. I ain't buying that garbage. But I think different technologies work in different situations. I'm pro-nuclear energy. It's cheaper and cleaner. Oh, I'm pro-nuclear. I just think it depends on the location, right? Nuclear makes sense in specific situations. And nuclear is far more safer now than ever before. A lot of the fear behind nuclear energy, and especially when they say, we're not having another Chernobyl, that was because people were just stupid. I think... If we go back, that was like the USSR days where communism was a factor. Yeah, I wonder why it bloody blew up.
Who gets supported? Needless to say, if you're an artist who believes in the principles of meritocracy and don't believe someone should get the money just because they're a gay, black, trans, quadriplegic, well, as George Carlin would say, you aren't in the club. And you won't be getting any of those sweet, sweet government dollary dues. The roadmap goes on to say that VicScreen wants to increase audience access to and engagement with content that is diverse and inclusive. Again,
considering how much desert exists in Australia, I think solar is the best bet there with a hydro and other energy generations. Yeah, I agree to some point there. I think it's actually kind of funny because whenever I see Americans argue about this, I see a lot of Americans go, "Oh, we don't want solar because it will be used in farmland." I'm like, bro, just put it in your car parks. Your car parks are big enough to bloody facilitate enough bloody solar to power free countries. Like, have you seen American car parks? They're massive. Just shove some solar panels. There's an area where I live, right? It's about 30 minutes away from where I live, and it's a giant shopping complex. And surrounding the shopping complex is a car park. It's a massive car park that goes around the shopping complex. Complete solar panels. It is amazing. Why? Because in the really hot weather, your car doesn't cook like an oven. It's the best thing in the world. And then during the colder weather, when it's raining, you don't get wet as is hard. Have you ever watched Clanson Farm? I have heard about it. I remember you said you want to plant something from us. I mean, I'd love to have my own, I'd like to set up a veggie garden at some point again. I used to have one when I was younger as a kid. But I don't really have the space because I've got a bunch of crap out there. I like to buy the neighbors next door and build a little farm, but good luck on that. It'd be easier for me to go move to America and buy some farmland and go live out in the country.
Content. Audience engagement with content. It's cultural shaping. This is not just we want local developers to succeed. That would more or less be admirable. This is we want the industry, the creators, the leadership, and the content to move in a particular ideological direction. And yes, I am using the word ideological deliberately, because when the government-funded agency has a 10-year plan to reshape representation, leadership, audience engagement, funding structures, and content outcomes, that's ideology. Look, you can support this ideology, you can oppose this ideology, take a fucking guess which side I'm on, but you can't pretend it's neutral. That's absurd. The roadmap also says VicScreen wants to demonstrate inclusion.
I think, one, government should not be involved in anything game-related. I don't think the Victorian government should be involved in any type of funding. But as far as this, like, studio goes, this studio just feels like it's just propped up. It doesn't even feel like it's a legit studio with passionate game developers or even viable good games. It feels like they're just making slop. And this reminds me of the movie industry, right? They're just getting funding from somewhere, but they're not even making any money from the actual products itself. This is like pure, like, the beginnings of, like, I wouldn't know what really the right word for it is, but it's just like like systems propping up stuff. I got a bloody system update, blah blah blah. Shut the fuck up. Yeah, I'll pause your dumb ass. Why do a system update while I'm streaming? But it's just one of those where it's like governments prop this kind of stuff up. Thank you, Nikkei. I didn't really need you to prop that up. It really wants me to know that it wants me to play Nikkei on the other screen. I just don't like the fact that the government is propping up a bunch of studios that aren't even selling games that are even selling. Like, that's the problem. They're financing slop. Imagine taxpayers finding out that their money is going towards a bunch of slop. While they're struggling to put food on the table, to put a roof over their fucking head, the Victorian Labour government is like, hey, we're going to come up with a new tax system so we can fund a bunch of indie developers that are going to make a bunch of DI fucking slop. That, by the way, isn't even going to make any money. Isn't even going to get you, like, any form of, like, recognition. That generally pisses me off, especially in this day and age, and especially when you've got Albanese sitting on the fucking news going, oh, I understand about the cost of living, it's so important to me, oh, I'm really sympathetic, blah, 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 here you go, you can have some more fucking taxes, so you can fund my bullshit. That triggers me.
Inclusive leadership in Vic screen decision-making and behaviors. Decision-making? Well, now that's an interesting choice of words. Because when decision-making is filtered through DEI, funding is filtered through DEI. And if funding is filtered through DEI, then taxpayer money is being distributed through ideological criteria. That, my friends, is the propaganda pipeline. Not necessarily because every single game has a political speech in it. In fact, from what I've seen in Mixtape, it really doesn't. It just has a million other layers of cringe. It's also not necessarily because every funded studio is making a campaign ad. The propaganda is in the apparatus itself.
I just feel so triggered hearing this, because it's just like the fact that, and I mean, I knew about the billionaire thing. I knew that it was the developers were in Melbourne, because I just found that out just before I started the video on X. But the thing that's actually triggered me the most is the fact that the fucking government is funding it. That triggers me. Because if you're a taxpayer, your money is going to some shit slop that no one's gonna fucking hear about. That triggers me. Because they're creating new tax systems. They're creating new thresholds. They're adding capital gains tax. They're upping that. We're going to have the highest capital gains tax in the entire world so they can fund a bunch of NDIS scams and this slop. Yeah, the government's funding it, so no, yeah, and that's the problem. As soon as it becomes funded, it no longer matters if it's an actual good game or not. And you can say, well, it's passion at that point. The only passion is the propaganda. That's it. There's no... In my opinion, there's no real gameplay on it. It's false marketing. It's sold as this indie game, but it's not even an indie, and it's not even really a game. It's a slop version of a visual novel. And we all know why the Labour government is trying to push this slop, because they're trying to push the whole idea of immigration is good while they build a fucking pyramid scheme in their entire economy because they can't financially budget their entire goddamn thing. That's what pisses me off. And then you got Friendly Geordie sitting on Facebook going, oh, this is so good, oh, Labour's so amazing. He's no different than the media that he fucking goes after and that he lambasts on. Because he's sitting there cherry picking his information going, I'm going to cherry pick my information. Yeah, I wonder why he votes Labour. And even his own content creator friends have publicly stated, yeah, he's probably a paid Labour shill. Even his own friends don't even want to deal with him anymore because he's such a spineless prick. He gets firebombed and he bends the knee to the Labour government because they don't even want to protect him. The Labour government don't even like him. Fun fact, Friendly Geordie, even the Labour government don't like him. He's just a useful idiot for them. Are there any good government-funded games? I don't know. I find most good games these days are generally funded by a community. And that's what you should be doing, right? Give the money to the people and let the people decide where to allocate their money and their finances so that it can then go to places that they believe best represents what they want. But the government isn't interested in actually making good games. They're interested in funding political fucking propaganda so they can justify their shitty immigration policies.
It's in the institutional pressure. The real propaganda is in the criteria. It's in the fact that public money is used to reward compliance with state-approved cultural vision, and the roadmap gets even more explicit. Vic Screen says it will review data collection to better understand how funding is spread across underrepresented communities, and that it will
fucking called it. Labour government can't fucking do a single goddamn thing without needing to build some fucking political propaganda. What, you already have the media in your fucking palm of your hands. What, you need now the gaming industry? Oh my... Oh. Fucking stupid. What? I'm filtering myself so goddamn hard right now. I'm filtering myself so goddamn hard. They invite all these criminals, rapists, murderers, all the rest into this country, and they won't do anything about it, but they give more power to ASIO so they can crack down on us, so they can be like, you're dangerous. Don't worry, we'll let in the fucking Muslim brides that want to kill us all. And then Americans wonder why I want to leave the country for the US. Oh my God. It's frustrating because taxpayers like me that pay taxes are funding a government that is funding a game developing company that is trying to spread propaganda into why immigration is good, the same people that are coming over this country that want me dead. So I'm paying a government to pay a studio to build propaganda to brainwash dumbass leftists that are then going to want me dead, that then import other people that are going to want me dead. And then once we're gone, what then? They go after the leftists?
will share baselines and target quotas once they are set. Targets, quotas, funding spread across communities. And they're hiding all of this, just not in the way you might think. It's hidden in plain sight, which is one of the oldest tricks in bureaucracy. You don't need to lock the document in a vault, have your secretary swallow
the federal government works for the UN, not US. Are we talking about US as the government or Australian government?
key, then get a couple of dudes in suits to politely guide said secretary to the Sydney Harbour.
Oh no, they totally won't go after the leftists. They're so tolerant. No, they'll go after the leftists once they're done with everyone else. That's the thing that these leftists don't understand. They'll come for them, but they're last on the list because they're the useful idiots. Do you really think a lot of these religious nutjobs that are coming over here really like trans people and part of the rainbow flag? No. No, they don't.
With a pair of concrete shoes.
Trust me, I see the way some of these religious people out there look at the rainbow groups. They don't like them. Isn't the US a federation? That's a good question. I'm not smart enough to know about the US.
It just published it as a...
The US government is the worst. At least you have the right to bear arms and free speech. But I mean, the US has a lot of problems too.
Long, boring PDF. You fill it with institutional language. You bury the real implications under phrases like equity, inclusion, program design, leadership, stakeholders, frameworks, and industry outcomes. And then you bank on the average person never reading it. Most people are working. Most people are busy. And most people are...
It's a constitutional republic. Well, yeah. I never know the big fancy word for it. But it's like, you know, America has a lot of problems with its country, but there are a lot of things that are going for it. Why don't we make our own country? We should just conquer Australia. I say that, and then ASIO will be knocking at my door going, excuse me, excuse me.
Are not going to read a 17-page DEI roadmap from the government screen agency in Australia I did just to make this video, which likely won't even get enough views to make my time reading it worth any financial sense. But
how much have you earned from Twitter?
People might just buy the game. They might watch the trailer. They might see the word indie, and they might think, wow, what a pure little creative underdog story. No, it's a scam. Not necessarily like an illegal or criminal scam, but a branding scam and certainly a cultural scam. The public sees indie. I see billionaire money, taxpayer cash, and a PDF written by HR demons. Behind the scenes, you find publisher capital, platform grants, state funding, ideological funding frameworks, and this is why the word indie is becoming meaningless. What are you independent from? Major publishers? Not.
Having guns is bad. It's so easy to get a gun in America. It will take you 5 minutes. US is a terror. If you think owning a gun is bad, then I think you really lack the ability to understand why our government in Australia is able to easily implement systems without fear of the people. Like I said, the US is not perfect, but the fact that they have the right to bear arms and protect themselves, they have a lot of benefits that outweigh. This whole idea of owning guns is evil, yes, I don't want to own a gun. I should trust the government completely. I'm sorry, but I just don't have that kind of faith in the government. You see why when you live in Australia and the UK and other countries like Canada, it's a bit hard to have a bit of faith in a government that slowly wants to strip away your rights, import people that want you dead, and then sitting there saying, well, owning a gun to protect yourself, that's a bad idea. I'd like some castle law over here. What if a mentally ill person gets a gun? What if a mentally ill person gets a knife? Or a machete? If someone's gonna... It's like, you're using faulty logic, bro. Oh no, a mentally ill person gets a gun. Yeah, mentally ill people are running around Melbourne right now, hacking and slashing each other, and no one's able to defend themselves to the point where they want to get the military involved, and the government won't do anything about it. You're blaming owning a gun because of bad actors. Well, then how about you don't import all the bad people?
Not if Annapurna's publishing you. Institutional capital. Not if Epic is giving you grants. Government money. Not if VicScreen is giving your project 6...
Owning a gun is fine, but in my country, the government requires reports of how many bullets are used and why. I mean, you can run away from a knife, not a gun. You're an actual idiot if you think that, by the way. I do combat training. I do karate. We do knife training where I come from, in my class, in my dojo. Running away from a knife attacker is the worst thing you can do in self-defense combat. The only time you run away from a knife attacker is if they are incapable of actually getting up quick enough to chase you. If they are coming at you face front, just turning around and running is the worst thing that you can actually do. That is the worst thing you can do. We do knife hand-to-hand combat training for that specific reason. And we're told, you don't just turn around and start running unless you actually are able to get away without them following you. Sorry, but if you think you can just run away from a knife attacker that easy, or even a machete attacker, you are very, very ignorant. I'm not trying to be mean to you. You are very ignorant. I mean, one, yeah, as chat says, you can throw a knife, but also, how do you know you're going to be able to outrun them? You only need to have one moment of lapse of, oops, I went around a corner a little bit too slow and they're able to catch me. you run out of breath or anything like that, or you get slowed down because you're running through a street and you get slowed by a car, you're stabbed. You're assuming, you're pretending you're on a track and field that you can run the entire distance from start to finish and somehow get away. It's not a video game, bro. A knife attack, it's not a video game. The statistical chances of them actually catching you and stabbing you are extremely high. The spirit can survive. It's like the first thing we're taught in my dojo is to avoid areas where there are conflict, right? Do not go near an area that could have a knife attacker. But it's also just straight up like, if you're gonna run, you need to make sure that you can get a leg start. Which means you need to be able to actually defend yourself against a knife attacker to some degree. I live in the UK. We have more knife attacks than anyone. Running away from a knife or bricking them is easier than trying to get away with someone with a gun. I don't believe you. I really don't. I really don't. You just make it sound like, oh yeah, I just turn around and start bolting. Maybe if you're like already 100 meters away from them, or even 10, 15 minutes, like meters away from them, and you have the ability to quickly see them ahead of time, and then you're bolting, sure, that will work. But again, that is a very situational. You're just implying, oh, no one should own a gun because guns are dangerous, but by the way, knives are okay because I might be able to run away from them in different scenarios. What happens if you walk around a corner and someone straight smack bang in your face with a knife? How do you run away? You're just going to turn around? You'd already be dead. They'd already have it in your back. You're trying to use a very blanket situation, which leads me to believe that you have not ever dealt with a proper knife attack. I think maybe you've seen some very rough hooligans down the street and you've gone, oh, I'm going to avoid that, which is smart, by the way. You've done the right thing there. But to get right up close with someone with a weapon, that's not pleasant to deal with. You're going to get hurt because the first thing you learn in that kind of situation is you're going to get cut. It's not about stopping the attacks, it's about minimalizing damage. Any item can be used as a weapon, and that is correct, by the way. That is correct, by the way. Any weapon can be used. I've got my car keys in the other room, but we've been taught how to use car keys as weapons. We've been taught how to use pens as a weapon. We've been taught how to use all kinds of things as a weapon because anyone can use anything as a weapon. And trust me, using your car keys as a knife is just as dangerous as even a knife. Because if you use it correctly, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna bleed. Not everyone can fight against a knife fighter. Yeah, but the point is that someone's saying we shouldn't own guns because, oh, dangerous people use guns. Dangerous people use knives. And it's, oh, well, you can run away from a knife fight. That's just not that simple. That's such a bland, generic way of looking at things. Tactical pens exist, exactly. I've seen them, they're good. But this whole idea that you can just run away from any knife fight, I don't think you quite grasp how knife fights work. Because once they get you, good luck. It's easy to get guns legally, by the way. But it's like, for example, I was just reading an article actually the other night as well. There's specific, and I'm trying to remember. I think it's Greenland or Iceland. It's one of the places up there, and they have the same gun license, if not just as relaxed as like the US, and they have the lowest gun violence. Why? Because they don't import crazy people from other countries into their country that want to kill them. This whole idea that people shouldn't own a gun because bad people own a gun is the same thing with knives. New Zealand, I believe, was trying to ban knives. I think they actually have. Because dangerous people hold knives. Here in Australia, they just tried to, well, they banned machetes. Because people have been rolling around with machetes. But guess who that affected? No one legally that ever owned one. Because no person that was using them was no Australian that ever had one was using it to go around hack people. You want to know who was using them? Illegal people. They're not going to go hand them in. I'm not saying people don't get killed by knives. I'm saying owning guns are far more dangerous. You know what's more dangerous than a gun? A car. You can run people over with a car. I could just go to a local area and just run a bunch of people over. Am I going to do that? No. But I'm demonstrating a point. That you want to sit there and argue that guns are really dangerous. Yeah, they are dangerous. But so are a lot of other things. That doesn't mean we should just ban them because they're dangerous. You want to live in a nanny state, which is the very reason why your country is getting taken over by rapists and murderers. Because you're just handing the red carpet to them. A car is a weapon. Yes, a car is a weapon. Should we ban cars because they're extremely dangerous? No. And you do know you can 3D print guns, right? It's not that hard. You know what banning guns hurts? You want to know who banning guns actually hurts? Legal citizens. Because people that don't care to abide by the law are the ones that will find a gun very easily, illegally. I just think you lack the awareness to understand a car goes. Now you're trying to apply speed to it as like speed changes its actual dangerousness. That is the most faulty logic that I've ever seen. It's completely different. No, it isn't. A knife is completely different to a gun, right? Because they're different weapon sets. Machete, gun, car, they're all different forms of weapons. A car is a large vehicle that you can drive into a large group of people and harm a large amount of people very rapidly. Guns are not worse. You're lacking complete common sense there. Because you have been pre-programmed to think that guns are the worst thing since sliced bread, which is why, by the way, all your people are getting raped and murdered on the streets, and you don't care, because you're like, oh, but I feel good, because I'm abiding by the law, and I don't need to protect myself. I can just run away from every knife fight. You can't run away from every knife fight. The reason why countries get conquered by these types of people is because you give away all power to defend yourself because, oh, well, there's a couple of bad people out there. Yeah, and now you've allowed even more worse people with all kinds of weapons, which, by the way, those same people will still get access to guns illegally, but you're not allowed to own one legally. But your solution is, I'll just run away from it. I wish it was that simple. I wish I lived in a fairy tale world where I could just run away from all the bad people. And there's a good example. That a certain person has asthma. How are they meant to run away? Some people aren't fit. And by the way, I've had this conversation with police officers, and they agree with me. At the end of the day, the ones that end up getting the guns are the ones that shouldn't be allowed to have them, but they'll get them anyway, and there's nothing the government will do about it because they're too busy going after all the good people that should be allowed to own a weapon. You're trying to apply the most faulty logic to, well, guns are worse than knives because, well, guns can go a certain speed than a car. Okay. And? Can still drive a vehicle. A vehicle still goes faster than a person. How's a person going to run away from a car? Oh, well, it's easier than a gun. I just think you're trying to create all kinds of weird loophole rules to try and justify your blind hatred for guns. Yeah, I grew up as a kid being brainwashed and told every day, guns are evil, guns are evil, guns are evil, give away all your freedom. And now look, the government has all the power to impose their own rules and force their own guns at your own head and say, you got to do as you're told. Now I don't have the ability to defend myself against a government that wants to enforce their policies by gunpoint. Because trust me, when governments come to enforce their draconic rules, they'll have the guns, and you won't. America has its faults, But at least the people have the ability to rise up. There's a reason why they have those amendments, to make sure that if a government ever becomes tyrannical, they have the means to defend themselves. Because trust me, the government will use guns. But if they take away the people's guns, how are you going to defend yourself? It's why you have castle law and the ability to defend yourself. Yeah, people do bad things with guns. Yeah. It's why you have laws. That's US literature. Yes. I mean, I might not be from the US, but I understand why the Constitution was made the way it was. Because they understood when the UK invaded the US to enforce and impose its own rules and taxation. Let's go through, again, Australian here going through basic US history. The UK wanted to impose a tax and enforce their own draconic systems on the US. And the US said, no, we're not going to do that. What did the UK do? They took their soldiers, marched them over, and said, well, we're going to shoot you until you do as we told. And guess what the Americans said and went, we've got our own guns. We'll defend ourselves. Your solution to defending yourself is handing your guns away and letting everyone else hack and slash at you and use guns on you. Sorry, bro. I'm not that fucking stupid to blindly trust people. It's like history repeats itself. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm frustrated at people's willingness to give away their own freedom for this virtual signaling. The reason why governments are able to get away with such draconic shit systems is because they know once they've taken your guns, what are you going to do about it? I just get scared at how fast people are willing to give away their own freedom so that they can pretend to feel safe in their glass house. Because no one should trust the government blindly. No one should. I think the US learnt that the hard way when the UK went over there. Like I said, there are a lot of faults for the US, trust me. I criticize the US for a lot of its damn stupidity. But for all of the US's faults, at least they have the ability to defend themselves. I mean, we've got massive problems going on in Melbourne right now. We just talked about it. Melbourne has massive knife problems, hacking and slashing, to the point where they want to get the military involved because people can't just run away from knife attacks. And sure, you might be able to. What about an elderly person? I just tell the elderly person to pick up the pace and run faster from that immigrant. Hack a hack a hack. He probably is. But I'd like to re-emphasize the point. It lacks all self-awareness, all critical thinking. Oh, just run away from it. Yeah, tell that to elderly people. Tell that to crippled people. Tell that to someone in a wheelchair. Tell that to someone with asthma. I mean, they can rage off all they want, but it proves to me that they're willing to sacrifice other people's lives so that they can feel better about themselves. Yeah, those gosh damn elderly people. Oh, why can't they just be as fit as a 16-year, 18-year-old? Get on and run faster, young lad. Old lad at this point, actually.
Fucking figures. Ideological.
I understand your argument, but having guns is far worse than not having them. If guns become legal in Australia and the UK, look at school shootings and random gun attacks by argument or be. You do know gun attacks still happen over here in Australia, right? I just want to break your mind. Gun violence still happens in Australia. And you want to know the funniest part about it is the people that generally commit the crimes with guns are not holding the guns legally. Again, a person that is going to commit a crime with a gun most likely is going to have one not legally. And they'll find a way to have it regardless of the laws. This is a conversation I have had with police officers in my own state. They've said gun restrictions do not stop gun violence. It just limits the ability for good civilians to defend themselves against actual gun violence. Because again, not everyone can run away from a knife attacker or someone that should not have an actual gun. You look at the Bondi situation. One of those was on a watch list. They shouldn't have been allowed to have the gun to start with, legally. But they had it. So why are people, legal people, getting punished, but the people that shouldn't be allowed to have a gun, have a gun? The problem isn't guns. The problem is governments allowing the worst of the worst people, criminals, people that are on a watch list, allowing access to them. And even if you try and ban them, illegal people will still get access to it. So why are people not allowed to defend themselves? You're basically saying we should give up our own lives so that you can pretend to feel safer. Far more worse cons than pros in hindsight. No, there isn't. There isn't, because all your cons come down to a make-believe situation that can easily be countered. Oh, well, you know, guns are really dangerous. Yeah, they are. And people still get access to them illegally. But yet the people that have them legally, that abide by the law, are the ones that are being punished. So you don't actually really care about lowering crime. You care about punishing legal gun owners that just want to protect themselves. You're basically saying to an elderly guy, saying, I don't want you to live. I want you to get stabbed or shot by some immigrant so that I can feel safer, pretending to feel safer. It's funny because Australia has some of the strictest gun laws in the world, and yet we've got crime blowing out of control in Melbourne. That's clearly not a gun problem, but you think just getting rid of guns is suddenly going to make everyone feel safe again. Sorry, that's just a fairy tale world. Owning a gun shouldn't become unnecessarily that's bad, because that's how US has become these days. Again, the world is not perfect. Governments try to create tyrannical systems. They try to impose unfair restrictions and systems. And yet, people keep willing to bend the knee to tyrannical governments. Yeah, I feel like I'm gone into a lecture because I'm just generally frustrated. Because I'm watching governments become more and more and more draconic, allowing more and more and more bad people into our country to harm us. And we're being told you shouldn't be allowed to defend yourself. You can just run away from a knife. The gun offence will be worse in Australia and the UK for the reasons it's been illegal for so long. People will be able to get them easier and the way people are. That's just not true, though. And I know that's not true because I actually speak to police officers. Because I train with police officers. I know police officers personally. And they've told me that's just not the case. That again, even with all the gun restrictions that our government puts in place, it does not change anything. Bad people still get access to them. The people that end up getting punished are the legal upholders. So your whole logic there is basically saying, I want good Samaritans to not be able to defend themselves. I'm more than happy to go with agree to disagree. I watch good people suffer. I watch my friends in Melbourne suffering from all these crimes and all this stuff going on. And I'm sitting there frustrated to myself thinking, you know, if one, we didn't allow all these immigrants to come over and commit crimes, but if people had the means to defend themselves, like castle law, and I'm not saying, by the way, that Australians should be able to carry a firearm around the street and everything. I just believe Australians should be allowed to carry, which, by the way, is actually, and I'll end on one last point afterwards, but I just want to explain, right, that I believe Australians should be allowed to defend themselves in their own home with a gun. I do. And I believe we should have clear, concise castle laws in Australia that make sure that if someone attacks you in your own home, you have the right to use any force necessary to defend yourself. But you want to know what's really funny about Australian gun laws that you probably don't know as a UK? I'm allowed to have a gun, and I'm allowed to use it to kill someone legally if they're coming at me in a life and death situation. I am. I'm just not allowed to get a license for a gun under the reasoning of self-defense, but I'm allowed to use it for self-defense. Castle law would be mute if you don't have the means to. Exactly. Which is why I say people should be allowed to use a firearm within their own property, in their own home, to defend themselves against harmful intruders. I believe Australia needs clear, concise castle laws, not some of the wishy-washy ones. But we do have these kind of laws of what we call equal force, but it's so very loose and all over the place that a lot of the times court systems go, oh, well, you use too much force. And it's like, huh? The spirit has guns? Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Maybe I've been keeping a secret all along. The government would know because the government tracks it all. And that's the thing. Governments track it all anyway. They know if you own a gun or not.
Gatekeeping, not if funding bodies openly say they are embedding.
Chibi does? Oh yeah, he does. He's shown his gun. They shooting in the UK and it's so hard to get a gun. I don't know. I don't want to be mean, but it's like, over here, we have harsh gun laws.
DEI into program design and decision making. What are we looking at? We're looking at a studio that can wear the indie aesthetics while existing inside a funding ecosystem most consumers never see. It matters because
it's just the reason why I don't like the whole knife defense thing is as someone that has to do knife hand-to-hand combat training, I have learned very quickly in my dojo or in karate that knife defense is not fun to do. Because running away is just not viable. We've done that scenario in my dojo, by the way. We've practiced that scenario where he goes, yeah, just try and run away. And we have mock knives. We'll use mock knives. And trust me, it doesn't go pretty. It really doesn't. It really does. It's like straight away. That's why I just find the whole knife defense kind of really weak. But also, a lot of the times, a lot of current crimes over here, they're done with machetes. They're done with, like, the big, long blades. They're, like, really, really annoying. And they'll just hack at you. And they won't even cut straight through. They just keep hacking and they just slowly blunt away at your bone. It's horrible what they do over here. Some of these machete fights and all that kind of stuff. They get really brutal over here. But, yeah, I mean, there's gun stuff that happens over here all the time. The media just doesn't like talking about it. So...
because consumers are being sold a story. The story is this.
That doesn't mean that I don't think there should be clear gun laws to make sure people can't misuse guns. But I just think, and to be honest, the Australian government doesn't even bloody implement that properly anyway. They give a psychopath a gun, but they'll punish anyone else legally owning one. So...
this is authentic, grassroots, independent, and outside the machine. But when you follow the receipts... the machine is right there. It's just wearing a thrift store clothes and playing guitar badly.
Self-defense curriculum must be integrated into mandatory education for everyone. That's better than letting anyone have a gun. Yeah. I think it's extremely important when someone owns a gun to make sure they go through proper training, proper rigorous, like all the rest. You don't just hand guns to anyone, right? You don't give it to a psychopath. Zombie knives, they call them. They got holes above the blade to rip inside out. Yeah, they're horrible. They're horrible. They got a bunch over here. And they tried to do like a machete ban. And they had a bunch of bins. Barely anyone gave any of them out. Because all the criminals kept them. The only people that gave up theirs were farmers that were using them to just hack away at some bushes. Which is funny because you can still use other tools anyway. You use a saw, whatever. So I just, like I said, I just generally believe people should have the right to bear arms within reason. I don't like the idea of people wearing arms, like guns, into like hospitals or something stupid like that. No, right? But in your own property, you should be allowed to have a firearm to defend yourself. So if a knife attacker suddenly sneaks out in the dark, and you're able to get a firearm, then you should be allowed to defend yourself. I think it should be allowed in this country. That doesn't mean that I think people should be walking around with bloody rattling gale guns down the middle of bloody city. No. I think within reason. But I think we've gone too far on restrictions. And that's why I respect the fact that Americans have the right to bear arms. Because they've learnt throughout history that tyrannical, bad infiltrators and forces will do harm by them.
Might I add, you're using the same four
I love the way we were going over Mixtape and we went into a massive gun discussion.
fucking chords over and over. This is bigger than Beethoven and Dinosaur. They are just one
Swear to God, if Leon watches this, he'll be shitting himself laughing the entire time.
example. The bigger issue is the pipeline. Step 1, create the underdog indie image. Step 2, fail or attempt crowdfunding to build authenticity. Step 3,
And I just want to be clear, I'm not trying to hate on it. I'm very passionate about it because I've seen throughout history, I've read enough history, and I don't trust my government.
3, secure institutional support. Step 4, get publisher backing. Step 5, receive public funding. Step 6, operate within the ideological grant frameworks. Step 7, market the final product as brave, original, independent art. Step 8, maybe profit. If anyone questions
A lot of the profiting doesn't happen. As I said, please do not delete this stream. I won't. I'm not deleting my streams anymore. Unless it gets copyright claimed or strike, that's the only time I'll ever delete.
it,
Never trust the government? I don't. I used to be very far leftist. I used to be big pro-government, all the rest, pro-tax. And then as you get older, you just kind of realize that the world just doesn't quite function the way you want it to. You end up seeing behind the curtains, and you end up seeing the inefficiencies and the horrible things going on, and you see it for what it really is. And you just want less government in your face. You just want the ability to have your own land, live with a family, and just be able to protect yourself and those that you care about.
They are told they hate artists. They hate diversity. They hate creativity. They hate indie games. Go play your AAA slop like Pragmata, pedo. No. I just hate being lied to. I hate when public money is moved through bureaucratic systems that the average taxpayer does not understand. I hate when the ideological priorities are dressed up as neutral industry support. And I mostly hate when indie becomes a shield against criticism. Because you can't.
Like I said, I'll end on this. I'm not trying to hate on you. I see the path that everything's going, and I hate the idea that people don't have the means to defend themselves against very bad actors. And as someone that's been doing karate for a couple of years, spiritual pro-government once. Yeah, I was once when I was very young and naive. And my education system was very indoctrinating. But the thing was that I just generally see things for what they are. Do you have a streaming schedule? No, it's generally whenever I get off my ass. But, you know, I just see the direction that the world is going. And history has a tendency to repeat itself. I just want people to have the means to defend themselves. Because I don't trust the government. I don't trust all these foreign people coming over. And genuine good Australians. That doesn't mean every Australian is following the laws. And I think, again, there should be clear safety checks in place. Which we do over here anyway when it comes to owning a gun. Like, it is not hard. I said in my last stream, this is how stupid it is for Australia. I can get my gun license like that. But I'm not allowed to put on the paperwork that I use it for self-defense purposes. But I'm allowed to use it for self-defense purposes. That's how stupid it is. But in my dojo, you know, we learn how easy it is for someone to hurt you with a knife. It is so easy to just, like, jump you with a knife. And that's why we're always taught when it comes to knife fights, it's not about stopping a knife attack completely, because if someone's attacking you with a knife, you will get hurt, right? You will get cut. Like, that's the first thing our Shihan taught us, is that if you have a knife attacker, you're gonna get hurt. But it's about minimalizing the damage and making sure it doesn't hit critical parts, which is why you've got to defend yourself in a way that minimalizes critical damage, and the most you might get is like hands and arms, etc. It's all about blocking and correctly defending critical components. Only farmers allowed guns in the UK, and the shells have to be in separate parts of the house and locked up. Yeah, I know in the UK it's mostly a farmer's thing, and it's mostly for hunting purposes, which I still think is stupid. Why farmers? It's due to hunting purposes. I think it's generally kind of stupid. I think, to be honest, they say Australia has the strictest gun laws, but I actually don't really think that's true. I think UK has the strictest gun laws. I really do. Because we still have gun stuff that happens over here. And I've heard some gun stuff that happens over in the UK, but the media doesn't talk about it as much.
Can't have it both ways. You can't sell yourself as the scrappy outsider while benefiting from insider systems, or act like the audience owes you grassroots sympathy while you're taking institutional money.
Yeah, it's 100%. I do look up gun laws in different countries, and I do a bit of research, and I remember, yeah. Because I did the research for Australia, which was why I knew that you're allowed to get your gun license. You're just not allowed to say you're getting it for self-defense purposes. The best reasoning is you basically say that you're getting it for recreational purposes, so that you can go to like a gun range and practice and type stuff. If you get caught with a gun, you get a minimal 7 years in prison. Iceland has a ton of guns. That's right, yeah, it's Iceland. Iceland has like heaps of guns. They're like super relaxed on gun laws. And they have like really no gun violence. Why? Because it's all white people. Like there's very little immigration over there.
Money, and you definitely can't take said taxpayer money through agencies with explicit ideological roadmaps, then pretend the public has no right to ask questions. The public has every right to ask questions.
Switzerland? It might be Switzerland. Wait, guns, recreation. Yeah, recreation, is that the right word? The wording is you're not allowed to say you're not allowed to, or you don't want to have a gun for self-defense. You have to say it's either for, like, farm purposes, like, hunting, which, if you're in the city or something, that's not going to work. Or for, basically, I think, it's or for sports purposes. Say, for example, going to a gun range and playing around with it. But funny enough, I think if you're on a farm, you are allowed to let other people use the gun within that property and supervise. Because I've used a gun out in the farm, and I used it for killing rabbits, because we went rabbit hunting out far in the country, which was fun. But we had like a proper shotgun, or thingamabobbly. I believe I shot one. I think I mentioned it a bit ago.
Taxpayers have every right to ask, why is my money going here? Who decided this project deserved funding? What fucking criteria were used? Were ideological goals involved? Were DEI targets involved? Was content even considered? Was staffing considered? Was audience impact considered? And most importantly, would the public support this if it were explained plainly instead of obfuscated by bureaucratic language buried in a PDF? Give us plain old English! Imagine if the average person were told, your tax money is being used to fund entertainment projects selected by agencies that openly commit to reshaping the screen industry according to DEI principles, including people, leadership, audience, engagement, content, and future targets or quotas based around skin color, gender, disabilities, and sexual orientations. How many people would support that? Sure, some would. Most people wouldn't. And that is why the language is soft. Nobody says, we're using public money to enforce ideological compliance and cultural production. They say, we are building a thriving, equitable, inclusive screen sector. The government would never say, we are influencing what kind of stories get made. The government will say, we are increasing audience engagement with diverse and inclusive content. And your bot...
Yeah, they're not trying to directly control what they're making, but they're basically just influencing. They're saying, check these boxes and that will push it in a certain direction. That's why I just don't see the point in it. It's no creative freedom, it's just political propaganda.
And paid-for spokesperson with a kind smile and fake gaming credentials won't say, we're using funding decisions to reshape the industry. But they will say, we are reviewing program design. This is how institutions talk when they know plain language would make people angry. And again, I'm not even saying nobody should ever receive funding for their art. That's a completely separate debate. I am saying the public deserves honesty. If a game is taxpayer-backed, you should say that loudly. If a studio received institutional funding, you should say that loudly. And if DEI criteria shape funding decisions, you should certainly be saying that loudly. You're supposedly so proud of your push for diversity and the erasure of meritocracy. Wouldn't you want to draw attention to all of your success? Don't hide behind the word indie or fake some notion of supporting creators, claiming for the greater good of economic...
You think Mixtape would be more loved if the characters are hot? No. I think the story is just sloppy. It's a very sloppy story from what I've seen so far.
Development, and do not pretend this is apolitical. It is absolutely political. It's cultural politics, and worse, it is state-backed cultural politics. Whether you call it propaganda, soft power, cultural policy, ideological funding, it's all a distinction without a difference. Government-backed institutions are influencing which creators get resources, which companies get supported, and which stories get elevated. What values the industry is expected to adopt.
Who made Mixtape? It's a specific studio, but it's got a lot of funding from the Victorian government. A bunch of it. And then, of course, this, like, billionaire guy.
That's the story. That's the pipeline. That's why this matters, because video games aren't just fucking toys anymore. They are cultural products. They shape identity, taste, politics. They shape what young people think is normal. That's the real scary part. And people funding them know that. This is why screen agencies exist. This is why cultural funding exists. This is why these roadmaps exist. Nobody wrote a 10-year DEI roadmap because they think culture doesn't matter. They write it because they know it does. They know stories matter. They know video games do. They know representation does, just not in the way they claim. Audience engagement, leadership, decision-making, direction, it all matters. It all goes on and fucking on, and they want to control every bit of it. So the question is not, is this just a game? The question is, who is funding the culture? And once you ask that question, the indie illusion starts to fall apart. The answer is not always passionate artists and supportive fans. Sometimes
I don't think the game was made with passion and intent. I think the whole idea was to sell a messaging. And that's what a lot of these, like, activists do. They're not really interested in making a game. They're more interested in selling a message. It reminds me of a lot of content creators that make content now on specific things, like AniTubers. They're not really interested in anime anymore. They're more interested in how they can use anime as a tool to push their own agenda. And that's the frustration for me.
The answer is a publisher, a billionaire-backed media network, a platform grant, a government agency, taxpayer-funded screen bodies, and a 10-year ideological roadmap. This is not the romantic indie story people were sold. This is the fake indie pipeline. And Beethoven and Dinosaur is just a perfect case study because it shows the entire contradiction. You have The Artful Escape, born from a failed crowdfunding but later supported by institutional money. You have Annapurna, a prestige publisher that gives the whole thing elite cultural credibility while still letting it feel indie. Then you have Mixtape, receiving almost $250,000 from VicScreen across public disclosures. Then there's VicScreen itself, openly stating that DEI is part of its long-term vision for people, content, leadership, funding design, audience engagement, and future targets. So no, this is not just about one studio. This is about how independent art gets manufactured, funded, filtered, and sold back to the public as...
Was your major specifically called computer science or cybersecurity? I specialized in cybersecurity. I did a lot of server maintenance stuff.
As rebellion. It's the public paying for it. The public deserves to know. Not for digging through PDFs, not through chasing grant disclosures, not for just connecting the dots of your own volition.
I saw that tweet. That was so funny. The fact that they were trying to play it off as a normal product, but they didn't disclose it was an ad. Which, by the way, breaks terms of service for X, so that person's account should be suspended.
Up front, plainly and clearly. Because if these...
money changes people. Sadly, sadly, Hope Espiritu wouldn't be one of them. Wait, are you saying money has affected me, or are you saying you hope money doesn't affect me? Because the wording there is a little bit loose.
Terms that these institutions are proud of what they're doing, They should have no problem explaining it in a way that people would understand. If they can't do that, maybe they already know how the public would react. That's why the story matters. It's not because the Artful Escape exists or because Mixtape exists. No, video games where you only press one button should not exist in 2026. Not even because...
It's not even one button, to be honest. You don't even have to press the button because it doesn't impact any real gameplay. It does like a little animation where they screw it up. Oh, you hope, yeah. It was just when you said sadly hope, it kind of was like blended into one sentence. And...
Beethoven and Dinosaur exist, but because this is a model. This is the future of culture if nobody pays attention. A fake grassroots aesthetic, institutional money underneath, ideological criteria in the fine print, and taxpayers left holding the bill. So the next time someone tells you a game is indie, ask a simple question. Independent from what? Because if the answer is not clear, you might not be looking at an indie game. You might be looking at a government-subsidized, publisher-backed, institutionally approved cultural product. And that's just a real different story now, isn't it?
See, that's the thing now. Whenever these kinds of games come out, we now have to look at the fact that are these games being funded by a third? And I mean, that's yeah, we're gonna have to do that like every time. It reminds me of like the whole original startup with that DEI stuff, where people were looking into what had DEI, that certain group that was like overseeing or giving advice. Now you're gonna have to look into seeing, oh, is governments funding this? Do you think Monta would become bigger than you? No, I never really thought about it. It doesn't really bother me if he becomes bigger. I think he's definitely growing. I've got a lot of fixing for my channel to do, right? The analytics is all broken with my channel and all that kind of stuff, and depending on when I stream and how often I stream depends on the kind of viewership and stuff like that and content. Australia's cooked. We have glitch platforms, goblins too woke for Disney, LA on the left, and Collective Shout on the right. Yeah, and that's something I was just about to say, is Collective Shout is another part of this whole equation as well when it comes to bad influences in the gaming industry. Collective Shout tries to ban everything that doesn't fit their political agenda or their certain criterias, and then you've got these other activists that are trying to make games that fit into those areas that are politically, you know, aligned with what governments and institutions want, and activists. So you're being attacked from two different sides, and it becomes harder and harder and harder. Either government funded it or baby product funded. Yeah, that's the group that I was thinking of. The baby group. I think that's where it's concerning. It when you look at stuff like Riv Mixtape, it reminds me of also the anime industry as well, because you've got a lot of bad influences going on in the anime industry as well. And I generally get frustrated by that because it's like, how do you compete against that? How do you fight against that? I think this was the tweet that I found originally that went over it. It was like, a broke group from Melbourne. Mixtape is published by, which is exactly what Leon went over. Handed by Larry, world's 6th richest person. It's made by a large team. As of now, essentially solo devs who have been actually broke in Melbourne myself most of my life. And that's the thing, genuine game developers are the ones that are actually suffering here, because they don't get the funding. Instead, some big group that has billionaires backing them is the one that gets money, which just shows that that funding is not there to help indie developers. It's there to help sell political propaganda. And then you've got people just absolutely deriding a small Australian studio, but it's not. It's quite a large studio, backed behind big institutional investors, backed by a government, and it's just political rubbish. We need committee that represents us consumers. It'd be nice, but it always ends up getting corrupted. Why not do a waifu rating stream where you rate every member's waifu? I could. Have you checked the Pippa Salva meme from Always Sunny in the... No, I haven't. Gaming and esports have always been a get in, get your friends industry, and the goblins. Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest problems with gaming as well. I mean, I look at something like Blizzard Entertainment, right? Because I've played World of Warcraft since vanilla, basically. And I think what frustrates me is when you look at how, say, for example, World of Warcraft changed. And as time went on, activists got into Blizzard and slowly started recruiting their own friends and started building their own little cliquey group of activists. And then as time went on, they slowly infiltrated and took over Blizzard in World of Warcraft. And now it's just some woke slop. It's just bad storytelling, bad game development. Just in general, it's just a bad experience as a game. Just bunch of slop fed to people and people eat it up. And then you got Metzen coming back and he can't even tell a good story anymore, right? The story's just inconsistent and all over the place. But apparently, you know, it's not him anymore. It's a team. It's like, yeah, clearly we can tell you can't tell a good story anymore, Metzen. And it just shows that when these activists get into a company, they will make sure they boot out anyone they don't like and put in their people. But you got to realize, how did they get in there to start with? Because other people allowed them to get in through the front door, being inclusive and good. And then basically, they boot out everyone they don't like and they politically destroy them. Tell you mine gladly. Mine is always Alice from SAO is my waifu. Step aside, Pirate Software. You are cooked. It is a spiritist. Yeah, but I'm not going to go crashing out like Pirate Software. Well, maybe I will, but not that kind of crash out. You'll get crash outs, but not that kind of crash outs. So, oh. Oh, it's just, yeah. It is a good video done by him. Oh yeah, here's another good one. Mixtape is coming under fire for not having gameplay, which just isn't true. Multiple players have posted examples in which, while the game prompts for input, the player actually doesn't have to press a single button and these segments keep playing out regardless. And they gave an example as well. I don't want to play it on stream because the copyright music, they'll probably just strike my channel out of being douches. So I do not want to run the risk, but you can always go find the tweet if you really wanted to. Kickstarter has changed its rules about adult and mature content. Platform states Kickstarter is not a venue for adult only or sexually explicit content, and such content is prohibited. New rules ban projects made mainly for pleasure, sexual pleasure. They prohibit. So basically, Kickstarter is getting rid of non-safe for work stuff. Interesting. I wonder if that will upset a lot of people or not. What a guy. He has a mental issue. He would go... Pirate Software is interesting to me because Pirate Software had the potential to really become a big content creator and really have a permanent impact on the content creator space, but he blew it all because his ego got hurt. I found a YouTuber who might actually not be a grifter. Carl... I think I've heard of that name before. Let me look. What's a grifter? I made so many videos on that topic. Oh yeah. I just realized I've actually got his video up on the other screen. Let me just pull it up. That one there. He brought it up. He brought the name up, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I've got that. I'm probably gonna have to save that for the next stream." But yeah. I keep saying, "Oh." My waifu is sister from Alia. Sometimes I feel there's an option. Her name, Mari. Her name is. Are you thinking of the main protagonist's sister or Alia's sister? Because Alia's sister is Mari, which is correct on that end. If you're talking about his sister, I've forgotten her name actually. Well, that's interesting. There's a couple of videos actually coming from the individual content creator that you mentioned. YouTuber arrested for lolly. They actually get quite good views for a lot of their content, which is kind of funny, by the way, because this kind of proves my point. This kind of proves my point that you can have very small amount of subscribers and you can get heaps of views. And that's why my channel's kind of broken, because I need to clearly fix things as far as like viewership goes. So I've got a lot of work ahead of me. Red said Desu denounces Lolicon. Maui did nothing wrong. That's definitely going to be some controversial. But yeah, it's interesting. I saw his live streams, which is actually kind of funny. Because there's like one that he did 3 days ago that he streamed, and it's about it's got Mother's Basement in there. So I thought that was kind of funny. I wonder what his take is on Mother's Basement. His sister's name isn't Mari. I forget what what his sister's name is. Alia's sister is named Mari. I'd have to actually check it up. I forgot her name because I'm having a brain fart. Alia, sometimes if it is Russian. Let me remember. I think it's Yuki? I was gonna say Yuki? Let me check. I'm brain farting. It is... Oh my god. Stop moving the screen around the place. Yeah, it's Yuki. Yeah. I was having a brain fart. I was like, ugh? I was like, I know who Alia's sister is. It's Mari. But yeah, Yuki. But yeah, that's who you mean. You mean Yuki, not Mari. Yeah, don't worry. I get names mixed up all the time. I'm terrible with names at times. But yeah, I do want to watch that guy's content. He's very small. He seems to be kind of getting a bit of an imprint on the wider community. Actually, funny enough, he follows me. Should probably follow him back at some point, if I remember. Just checking something. But yeah, I do want to go over that video at some point, just to be very clear. I do want to cover this video because it is something I actually agree with. Just on the title alone, I do agree with. Anime has a Christian tourist problem. And I do think that. There are a bunch of like Christian anime fans that are just jumping in, and it's just very obvious that they're more interested in trying to force political opinions rather than anything else. So, we'll see. It's not that hard to understand. It's the same reason people thought video games cause violence. But yeah. But I might leave it at that as far as the stream goes, because we went over that and I'm just kind of happy on covering that. I know I ranted a lot about gun laws, which is going to be funny because if I know who we're talking about. In what specific... Oh, is chat talking about something specific? It's just... honestly, there are some like Christian content creators that personally I see making content, and I just feel like you can tell they're grifting, right? They'll jump on every little topic. They'll try and like attack lolicon communities, and it's not just one. There's a couple of them, and it's just very obvious that some of them just, it feels like they're just jumping on something, and then they're trying to also push their political values at the same time, but their political values contradict, or their Christian values, political values, and their general like for something all contradicts itself. Because again, the anime community is very much something that I don't think, if you're a Christian and you're an anime fan, there are going to be some compromises I think you're going to have to make. But I feel like some Christians, they really want to hammer down on the anime community and really try to force an ideology that goes contrary to what makes the anime community anime. You didn't rant, mate. You just talked. Appreciate that. The Christian tourist is one of the worst people on anime. Well, this is why I always use the horseshoe theory, right? Because at the end of the day, you've got the far left extremists, and then you've got the far extreme right, which generally are Christians. And I had this conversation with Okko at one point on their stream, basically saying that I believe a lot of censorship that is going to be promoted over the next couple of years is going to be done by Christians, and that anime is going to be attacked heavily by Christians right now, because they've tried to sell themselves as that they're an ally of the anime community. And now that they've been accepted, now it's suddenly they're like, oh, well, actually, psych, now I want to censor things. And this is why I think there are some specific content creators, like a certain individual that suddenly pivoted his opinion over the last year or so, is suddenly now not in the favorable light of the anime community. But it doesn't matter, because they're just grinding off of Hassan videos and DEI videos and all the rest, which is ironic, because DEI and woke videos are generally calling out the idea of using political and almost religious mindset to try and destroy anime, right? Like, a lot of the rainbow flag stuff could be seen as religious in nature. So it's kind of interesting that certain Christians are pushing their own values and complaining about DEI and woke, are doing the exact same thing that the far left are doing as far as pushing for their own rubbish. Remember Christians being behind censorship at least in the 2000s or 90s? Yeah, they were. Video game violence was something that they constantly complained about. Religion shouldn't change anime. No, it shouldn't, right? There's nothing wrong with having religion in anime, but I don't like the fact that there are a lot of religious content creators that are trying to infiltrate anime and are trying to change the fundamentals of what makes anime anime. And I do think there are a lot of content creators on the right that claim that they're against censorship and changing anime, are very scared of calling this out because they've become friends with certain political leaning people. And again, I'm not politically captured by the left or the right, so I'm willing to call out both sides. And that's what upsets the left and the right, is that I won't drink the Kool-Aid of one side. I won't pick a side and blindly follow it. I will call out anything and everything I deem that is inappropriate, and I stick by those values. Religious groups have gamed out censorship. They learn when it comes. I think the biggest problem is that before Trump got into power, the right Christian group were trying to sell themselves as pro-free speech. They were allies of the anime and gaming community, that they were all about letting people be, free to do whatever they want. Like, oh yes, we have our own religious views, but we won't ever impose it on you like the left is doing with DEI and woke. And then as soon as Trump got into power and the political space shifted in the content creator space, suddenly that's when you have certain content creators that are suddenly going more pro-censorship, more pushing their political agenda, and also just specific content creators that claim that they aren't pro-censorship, deliberately no longer calling out censorship narratives, which is people like Rev. Rev used to be actively calling out censorship. Now, he barely calls it out in the same degree that he used to, because his complete opinion has changed and his political and religious values have completely gone contrary to what he used to believe in. And rather than just taking the mask completely off, he's just kind of hiding in the shadows and just kind of pretending that, oh, I'm still pro-free speech, but by the way, I'm going to actively just let my friends push for censorship. So it's why I just generally am disappointed in a lot of these content creators. But of course, the moment you criticize them, they go on about derangement syndrome. Signed a digital bill of rights. It's, yeah, everything is just so all over the place. Who's rep? So, yeah. We need more people. What about Tabat Season 2? I might watch Season 2 at some point and give my opinions on it. But I haven't really decided if I'm going to watch it or not. Because I didn't like Season 2 much. And I don't know if I want to watch Season... sorry, I didn't like Season 1 much, so I don't know if I'll watch Season 2. But yeah, there's nothing really extra other than that video that I'll do next stream that I'll go over. I unsubscribed to Rev because I called it. I think a lot of us called it. I think I'm just disappointed more than anything. I know I kind of harp on a little bit, but I just generally had a lot of respect for him, and it just kind of stings to see things change the way that it did. So, but yeah, that was a good video by Words of Paradise. I like the information they gave. Some of it I already knew. I mean, some of it I already knew. Some of the stuff, particularly like it being made in Melbourne, the billionaire that backed it. Clearly there was going to be some DI, but the government thing I did not know about, and that doesn't surprise me, but it irritates me. So, I swear if Mixtape wins game, it will win Game of the Year. Not like Game of the Year, it will probably win like Indie Game of the Year, right? It will win a bunch of indie awards. Because, again, the award show is completely rigged. It's all theatrical, it's all fake, it's all just some BS out there, so. But yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. I think we've went over a bunch of stuff. I will save the Anime Has a Christian LARPing tourist problem for the next video, the next stream. Unless something else props up that I really want to react to, so. Because I really did want to go over that Leon video. I was thinking about saving it for a couple of days, but I kind of really wanted to know what it was about. So, again, I appreciate everyone that dropped by. I will, again, continue to try and stream more frequently. I'll try and get more content out as well as far as videos go, even on the second channel. There's a couple of reviews that I want to do. Want to do one on Slime and a couple of other stuff, so much appreciate it. And I will see you all in the next stream.